Too many times we stand aside and let the waters slip away. To what we put off to tomorrow has finally come today. So don't stand upon the shoreline and say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids and dare to dance the tide. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the blind blogger, Maxwell Ivy, and this is another episode of What's Your Excuse, where I will hope to help you explode those excuses that are keeping you from accomplishing your big goals and dreams. And I'm going to do that by bringing you amazing interviews with people who have overcome adversity or thrived in spite of difficult life circumstances. Others who have struck out on their own and started a unique, unusual new business. Experts who have advice and suggestions that we know work because they've been practiced and used in the real world. Or people I just happen to find interesting, inspiring, motivating, people I want to talk to myself. So you can find me and the show at theblindblogger.net. You can also find it by saying, Alexa, start the blind blogger, or okay, Google, talk to the blind blogger. Thanks to my... I don't know that one. Yeah, I appreciate that, Alexa. Thank you. And thankfully, my friend and sponsor of the show, Chip Edwards, and his wife, Pam, at Create My Voice, have helped me get my blog and my podcast set up where they can be found, discovered, listened to, appreciated on the wireless speaker devices. And it's a huge exploding market out there. And if you're not available where people can listen to you in their car while they're cooking, doing their chores, driving to and from work, then you're missing a big chance to reach a lot of people who may need to hear what you have to say. Or in my case, I want to give my guests the opportunity to reach as many people as possible. So, you know where to go to do that. I don't want to say her name again because she will get on the audio again. Today I'm having a guy. I was on his podcast just recently. His name is Bob Thibodeau. He is a minister, motivational speaker, author, radio host, and owner of a radio network. I'm going to let him tell you more about himself. You can find him at bobthibodeau.com. And looking forward to having a great conversation, having y'all learn from his experiences. He started off as a drill instructor in the military, proceeded to be a police officer, was injured and went on disability. And then while he was on disability or transitioning away from the police, he started his own new thing, radio, podcasting. And I'm looking forward to him sharing that with y'all and hopefully encouraging some of you who've been thinking about a podcast, actually doing something about it. So, Bob, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, man. I appreciate the opportunity. The interview we had was awesome, and I just hope that I can provide as much value as you did to your listeners as you gave to ours.
Well, I'm sure you will, because, we talked for about 30 minutes before you press record, and I wish I could have that audio back because then I wouldn't even have to do an interview because that was some great stuff. So
Amen.
One of these days I'm gonna hire an editor and I'm just gonna start recording everything, and then I'll let them figure out what stays and what goes and what ends up in the bonus audio that people have to subscribe for and all that good stuff. So since now that I've messed up your bio, why don't you tell people a little bit more about yourself and how you came to be a radio host, a podcaster, and owner of your own network?
All right. Well, I'll start off by just giving the summary of my background, I guess you could say. What I do now is because the Lord brought me through a dark period of my life. And that's basically the foundation that got me to where I am today. So in order to understand where we're at today and what we're doing and how the Lord is using us, it started, all I ever wanted to do, starting about 9th grade, was to go in the Army. That was my life's dream, make that a career. So as soon as I could, in my senior year, I enlisted 9 months prior to graduation. And 10 days after graduating from high school, I went on active duty, went to basic training, and I just loved it. I even loved basic training. That's how weird my mind was. Right? But I applied myself, and I was promoted ahead of my peers. I loved my job, loved everything about it. And about I guess 6-7 years in, I got selected for drill sergeant status. I guess about 6 years in, I got selected for drill sergeant status, and that was awesome. I had excelled before that I had excelled when I was at the NCO Academy, and I was the first person in the history of the United States 8th U.S. Army NCO Academy to achieve 100% rating all the way through it in every 3 different areas they graded. So that, helped out a little bit in my promotions and favor, I guess you could say. And I was selected for drill sergeant status, and I absolutely loved drill sergeant status. That was one of the best jobs I ever had. My first day there, when I reported in, the senior drill sergeant pulled me aside. He goes, "Okay, you can do anything you want to them, just don't put them in the hospital." I mean, what kind of guidance is that, right? That was awesome. I got to yell and make people's life miserable and got paid extra for doing it. It was just a great job, right? But as I was winding up my drill sergeant time, I was looking at the pay charts one day and realized that a captain that had 4 years prior service as an enlisted, which if I became commissioned, I would definitely qualify for that, made over $400 more per month at retirement than a sergeant major did. And I was definitely on track for sergeant major, but I'm looking, wow, $400, that's like a car payment, So I decided to go for the big bucks. Now, I had pieced together, and I say pieced together, I mean pieced together one class at a time, sometimes 1 or 2 classes in a year. I mean, that was about the maximum of my education, college experience on that. But over the course of about 8 years, I had pieced together an associate's degree of general studies. Right? Not a big thing, but it was enough to get me qualified to apply for officer candidate school. So I did, because everybody in the military, every officer made captain. It was just almost a given unless you got caught with the general's daughter or something like that. So I applied, was accepted, completed officer candidate training, got commissioned in June of 1986, and became a cavalry officer. And I loved that job as well. That was just a great time. I got along great with all of the guys because of my enlisted experience. I could relate to what they were needing and where they were coming from. I got along great with my fellow peer officers, but the upper echelon, the colonel, the major, a couple of the captains that were West Point graduates, they didn't too much like me. I had a new captain come in, and he said that the colonel, when he's briefing him on the officers he's going to be in charge of, when he got to me, he basically said, Lieutenant Thibodeau is kind of like an NCO impersonating an officer. Right? So that was his description of me. Well, at the time, there were 2 Passovers given for captains, 6 months apart. What we call Passovers. They're 2 selection boards. And I knew, because I was competing I had gotten commissioned in June of 1986. So I was competing against all the West Point graduates, all the ROTC graduates. I knew I wasn't going to make that Passover. But the next one, 6 months later, it was a piece of cake. It wasn't a problem. We kept waiting for the list to come out. And in July of 1989, I got called into the colonel's office. Oh, there it is. The list came out. He's going to tell me I didn't make it. I walked in. He said, "Bob, you didn't make the list." I go, "No problem, sir. I got the next one. I wasn't expecting this one." He goes, "There isn't going to be a next one. The Secretary of the Army has said they had too many people in the military or in the Army, so he had waived the second Passover for captain. You have to get out." So I had 10 days notice that my military career was over. And this is something I had given my heart to, basically. And that was hard. I could have gone back on enlisted status, but that would have meant a 40% pay cut for the family. Wow. I wasn't going to do that. So I got out. That was the end of my military career. The day I signed out, packed the family up, we went to Disney World for a week, because you got to understand my mindset. if I can't even tell you how many anniversaries, how many birthdays, how many special events I missed because I was a soldier first. And I used to tell my wife that all the time. I married the Army before I married you. And that's how dedicated I was. So you can imagine, to be told you got 10 days to say goodbye. This is like, coming home and having your wife say, I'm getting a divorce. I mean, it was that traumatic to me. And I started drinking heavy. I was drinking before, but I really started drinking heavy then. Coming back from Disney World, I realized I don't even have a career. I don't have any plans. What am I going to do? So I end up becoming a life insurance agent just to try and put some meat on the table. And I found out I was good at it. So good that in 2 years, I had my own agency. And 3 years after that, I was the number 2 ranked agency in the nation for the company I was working with. And all that was going along fairly well until the Gulf Wars started and the bases packed up and moved 6,000 miles away. Real hard to sell insurance when there's nobody home, right? And that started the downward spiral all over again. We started using credit cards to keep the bills paid, and then we couldn't pay the credit cards. It just got to be pretty bad. I decided, well, I got to go somewhere where there's still people that I can sell insurance to. So I decided to go to a training base. I moved. At the time we were in Leesville, Louisiana, outside Fort Polk. I left my family there. I moved to Fort Benning, Georgia, in a little dumpy apartment just to sell some insurance and try and catch things up. I moved there January 1st, 1992. By January 25th, 1992, I had sold zero, nothing. And I was talking to my wife on the phone, and she said she got a notice that the lights are going to be turned off. We're already 2 months behind on the mortgage. And she said, I ran out of money. I don't have any more money to put gas in the car. I don't have money to buy kids food. What are we going to do? And I said, I really don't know. I don't know. And this was about 11:20 at night. Now, she had been born again about 4 years prior to that. Not me. She used to hold a pastor, invite her pastor over, and they do a Bible study out in the kitchen. I'd be out on the deck having a drinking party. Right? I mean, I was just that far gone. If you would have looked up in the dictionary at the time, the word heathen, it had my picture next to it. But anyway, I went into this little bedroom after I hung up the phone with her, and I just started crying my eyes out because I was at a loss. That was it. I had hit bottom. And I didn't have a bed. I didn't have a dresser or anything. I was sleeping on the floor with a blanket. My dresser was the box that I used to carry everything in. Now, at some point during that year, I had started reading my grandfather's Bible. Why? I don't know. Maybe it was just to appease my wife. But I had gotten into the habit of reading. There was in the front of in the front of my grandfather's Bible, there was 2 or 3 columns, and you could pick any one of those to read the Bible through in a year. And I had chosen to read 2 of those columns in the morning and 1 in the evening before I went to bed. Well, as I was crying, I just looked up and basically told God, I said, look, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And as I was saying that, the thought came, if you commit suicide, they can use the money to catch up all the bills, pay off the house, and they'll know how much you love them. And I think, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I just made the decision. And the thing was, I loved my kids so much. They were young at the time that I wanted to tell them goodbye and how much I did love them. So I said, tomorrow, because they were, it's 11:30 at night when this was going on. They were already in bed. I said, tomorrow, when they get home from school, I'll call them in the afternoon, and then that'll be it. So I was praying to God. I said, if you can do anything to fix this situation, you got to act now, because I'm done with it. I'm not dealing with this anymore. I went to lay down, and when I lay down, the light shining through Venetian blinds, the light from outside shone right on the Bible sitting there. And I'm laying there, I forgot to read my scripture. So I got up, opened the Bible up, and that night, I was supposed to read Psalms 34. And I got down to verse 7 and said, "The Lord has heard this poor man cry and shall deliver him from all his troubles." And when I read that, it felt like hot oil was, and I can feel it right now, it's just pouring from my head all over my body. And I started laughing, I started crying all at the same time. And I knew I'd been born again at that very instant, and that I had such peace, that depression, that guilt, that hopelessness had lifted. It was gone. And I got up and called my wife and told her, guess what just happened to me, right? And she started crying because she'd been praying for this for 4 years. And I told her, at the end of the month, I'm coming home. I can be just as broke at home with you and the kids as I can here. Right? So between January 25th and January 31st, I sold enough insurance to pay all my expenses in Georgia and begin to catch up the bills at home. And from that time on, it was just a miracle after miracle as we got going through this. Well, we moved to Killeen, Texas. That's when I ended up opening the insurance agency and grew that. Everything was going along good until some things happened at the home office where they were cutting our commissions and all this. And I just, what? I don't want to do this anymore. It'd been 5-6 years and I was sick of it. So I said, I'm going to become a cop. My uncle was a police officer, and I had been told, I'd worked in the local town in Louisiana as like a reserve police officer.
Right.
I kept telling me, Bob, you need to go to the academy. You'd be awesome at this. So during the process, we moved to Baltimore. My daughter had married a guy from Baltimore when he was in the military at Fort Hood. She met him there, moved out here. And, before I did all that, I went to Bible school for a couple of years up in Crowley, Texas, just south of Fort Worth. And I just graduated, and I said, what? If we're going to start over now, it's time to keep the family together. So we all moved to Baltimore, Maryland. And as soon as I got here, I started applying for police academies. And it was a couple of years because, they only hold them once a year. And so I had another job, which was a blessing. From the moment I got to Baltimore, we've been blessed. Even though I don't like Maryland, despise Maryland, but I don't move because this is where the blessing is. And just like in Elijah, when he went and did what the Lord told him to do, talking to King Ahab, and when he left, he said, "It's not going to rain till I say so." Then he turned around and walked away. He didn't go home, kick it up his feet. The Lord told him, didn't tell him, "Good job, man. You could take it easy now." He told him, "Run, go over there. Your provision is over there." And he could have said, "I don't want to. I want to stay here." And it had been up to him, but his blessing and his provision was there. Well, Baltimore is my place called there. This is where the blessing has been. So we got a good job and ended up buying a house and catching up the bills and everything like that. And I got accepted to the police academy, and life was just grand. I enjoyed that job just under what I enjoyed my military time, but it's the same type of environment. And that was awesome. And then May 12th, well, put it like this. And I was a runner from the time I was in the military. I loved running. I would run 10 miles on a Saturday just because I had nothing to do, right? I mean, it was that type of thing. I ran the Baltimore Marathon in 2016, took off. It was late October 2016. So I took off all of November, all of December to let my body recover. January, I started training for the next Baltimore Marathon, which was in 2017. May 12th, 2017, I ran about 9 miles at a 7.5 minute pace. Came home, showered, went to work that night. I worked midnights. And we had one of those huge rainstorms coming in. And we had a big accident out on the highway. My job was basically highway patrol. While working that accident scene on May 12, 2007, I ended up getting hurt in an accident as well. And that ended my running. And not just that, but, put it like this. From May 12, 2007 till today, I've had 32 different medical procedures on my knee, my right knee, my hips, my back, my wrist. And that took me off. That started a downward spiral again, because they started talking about, well, you might not be able to do this job anymore. And I had already started over 3 times now. At the time, I was 52, 53 years old. I was like, Lord, I'm getting too old to start this again. And it, it was becoming a dark place again because of the surgeries and the pain medicines they had me on. I was taking 4 different types of medication for the pain and various things, and 3 of them were at the maximum dose authorized by the FDA. If they had given me just 5 milligrams more, the insurance company would consider it experimental and wouldn't be covered. So these were such strong, a couple of them were narcotics, but such strong medicines that I couldn't take them together. I'd take like one every 4 or 5 hours during the day. And as soon as I take it, about 20 minutes later, I was knocked out. I mean, I had to go lay down. That was my life. And one day, while I was recovering from surgery, and I had it had been about 6 weeks since a knee surgery, and I was just sitting at the computer, couldn't walk around. I was basically living in our basement because I couldn't handle going up and down the stairs, so I just stayed in the basement in the bedroom downstairs. And I was sitting at the computer and I asked the Lord, what do you want me to do? Because the way that it had been processing was I'd have a surgery, take 6 weeks to recover, go back to work, and getting a foot chase or whatever would happen, and something else would go wrong, and then they'd be on light duty, and then scheduled for a surgery, and the whole process would just kept repeating over and over. But I would always fight back to come back to work. And one day I was sitting at the computer after a surgery and unable to walk around or get outside or do anything. I said, Lord, what is it you want me to do? Do you want me to keep fighting this or what? And it just came to me. Just trust me. So, okay, what do you want me to do? I want you to begin a weekly 30-minute online radio program. Now, today we call it a podcast, as you alluded to in the introduction. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had to have help checking email. Okay, this is how much of a faith walk the Lord took in calling me. All right. So I said, well, can't do nothing else. So I started teaching myself what this was all about. And in the process of time, within a month or so, I had my podcast up and running. Like I said, I didn't know it was, I never called it a podcast, call it my online radio program. About 4 months into that, this would have been November, December of 2009. About 4 months into that, I got an email from Wilkins Communications. They were a radio conglomerate. They had at the time something like 10 or 12 AM radio stations across the United States. And I got this email that said, we've heard your podcast and we think you'd be a good fit for our radio station. That's the first time I'd ever heard it called a podcast. And they said, well, how would you like to be on nationwide AM radio? Like, oh, this is the Lord's work. Yes, amen. And
now, was this opportunity free? Because I get a lot of those emails myself, and they usually come with a bill attached to them.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. There's one tiny catch. I had to pay for it. And I was like, oh man, But we had negotiated down. Now they wanted something along the lines of, I don't know, like $75 for a 30-minute broadcast on one station and all that. I said, I'm not doing that. And over a course of a couple of weeks, we got it down to $25 per station for a 30-minute broadcast. And maybe it must have been more than that, because the grand total was $600 a month, right?
Right. So if they had 12 stations, that would be roughly about $50 a station per episode or per month, or however y'all figured it.
Yeah, whatever it was, it came down to $125 a week.
Okay. And
I was on 4 major markets in the United States. So whatever that came out to be, but it was one 30-minute broadcast per week. Okay. Today I call that a commercial. All right. Because it's not a program, but I thought it was something, right? But I signed the contract. I said, okay, $600 a month. It'll be tight, but $500 a month, whatever it was, $500 a month. And then the months where you got those extra few days in there, that came out to $600 a month. $6,000 a year is what it was. But I was like, I can afford that right now because I'm still working. Well, as soon as I signed the contract, about 3 months later, I get this, letter, because the normal processing time for someone who's going to retire is about a year for our department. And in February, they made the decision, we're going to have you retire, start getting your paperwork together, submit it. And my wife and I prayed over this packet on April 3rd of 2011. And I prayed over it, and I said, Lord, I don't want to be in limbo for a year. If this is what your plan is, I want you to show up and show off. On May 20th, something like that, I got a letter in the mail, congratulations on your retirement. So now, all of a sudden, this is going to be a huge, big deal, because I'm living on a reduced income. We got to pay for this bill. Well, I got a little bit ahead of myself, but because all this started in 2010 with the radio station. Towards the summer of 2010 is when they were talking about the retirement issue, and I'm like, oh, what are we going to do? And as the Lord said, I've called a lot of other people, a lot of other pastors to preach the gospel on the radio. They can't afford to either. So I want you to start your own online radio station and make it so affordable nobody can say they can't do it. It's like, okay, I don't know what that is or how to do it, but that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. What do you want me to charge? Because I'm thinking, oh, we're going to be a radio station. This is going to be awesome because I'm paying radio bills, right? I know, how much they can charge. Because I want you to make it free. Lord, you do realize there's expenses with this, right? And he said, just trust me, all right? And that's the second time he told me, just trust me. So we did. And October 4th, 2010, what is now Evangelism Radio was launched. We've been going 24/7 every day since October 4th, 2010. Just celebrated our 9th anniversary, now into our 10th year.
Yeah, that's a big achievement. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, so I want to touch on a couple of things. One, with you, it's about your faith in God and a calling from Him.
Yep.
Me, over my lifetime, I've benefited a lot by having faith. If I haven't until recently exactly had a religion or a church, I've always had the faith.
Yep.
But for other people who are trying to accomplish their goals and dreams, some of them, it may just have to be faith in the mission or the goal or themselves, which is not as good. They'll usually have to depend more on their own personality or support from their friends. But either way, it comes down to having faith in what you're trying to do.
Amen.
Okay. The other thing is let's go back to when you started your first podcast and you were sitting in the basement at your computer.
Okay.
What were some of the things that you had to figure out that you had never had any experience with before, and what were some of your solutions?
Well, the first podcast I did, and I did this for about 6 months. My recording device was my cell phone. And I would call into this line because it was a free site, okay?
Yeah.
And I would call in and they would record the call, and then it would be saved, and from there people could go and listen to it and things like that. So, the technological aspect was simply for me to be able to call in and access that little server. And sometimes, because I'm calling from the basement, remember?
Yeah.
It was a challenge, sometimes. Well, and it sounded, sounded like I was talking on a cell phone. Right?
Yeah. The technology wasn't anywhere near that good in 2004 or 2007. And I remember doing interviews as a guest myself on the Brian the Hammer Jackson show on a platform called Blog Talk Radio, which is also a free platform for people. And I remember my first show and listening to it after it was over with. And first I was horrified by how badly I did on the show. And second, it was like, man, this audio stinks, I was calling on a flip phone. So
that's what I was using.
yeah. 2013 was my first interview on that show. It was the first time I ever did radio as somebody owning my own business or trying to promote myself. So, and you know, those recording platforms, they work well. They're, and especially as they've gotten better, people can call in from other parts of the world, which is one of the few benefits they had at that time. So,
yep, amen.
all right, so you had your audio quality, and I'm guessing you were calling from your basement, so you probably didn't have the best acoustics on top of your phone quality. So
that's correct. Yep.
So did you just think, okay, I'm going to just do my best show and depend on people to ignore the quality issues, or did you find ways to make the quality better, or both?
Well, because the cell phone would sometimes drop, in the middle of the call, and I had to try and call back in, and it was just a big hassle. My son-in-law, he said, well, why don't we set it up where you can use your computer to call in? And I said, how do you do that? Right. So like I said, I am not technically gifted in this area.
Right.
So he set it up where I could access it via the computer platform. And we got a little headset with a boom mic, and that improved the quality so much. I was like, wow, this is awesome, and I started getting a following. It was like, I had, when I go in, because you do those calls live,
right?
I would, and it wasn't me accepting phone calls. I was just preaching basically, and it was
right.
a podcast. And I end up getting, 20, 30 people listening to me per show. And I'm like, wow, this is really awesome,
Yeah.
And then when the Lord said, I want you to, make your own radio station. Now, how do I do that? Because obviously I couldn't use, the platform I was using. It wasn't Blog Talk Radio. It was something even cheaper, right?
I don't know how you get cheaper than free, but notice something, people. Either he expressed his frustration to his brother, or his brother noticed that he was struggling. Somehow this subject came up that audio quality was an issue. He was offered a solution, and instead of letting his pride or his ego get in the way of accepting that solution, he's like, I don't know how we do it, but if it'll make the quality better, then let's try it.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. Well, when we started Evangelism Radio, the Lord had given me a list of 10 things that we were supposed to, well, I'm sorry, that was Evangelism Radio. The first platform we were on for the radio station was Live 365.
Okay.
And that's where we started. It was called FTF Christian Radio at the time, Freedom Through Faith Christian Radio. We started with one broadcaster, that was me. And within about 6 weeks or so, we were up to like 10 broadcasters. And you could play music on there. So it was a radio station. It was getting a following. We started at the very bottom of the charts, and we're slowly inching our way up. And I would still do my recordings, because I have a daily broadcast plus one on Sunday. So I was doing a daily broadcast, then loading it to the platform. Sometimes I'd record in advance, but it was still a 30-minute broadcast, all that. And then I got smart. I said, why don't I just do my Sunday morning 1 hour program and then divide it up into 5 segments and load it? And that's kind of the pattern that we've been doing now ever since then. But Live 365 was the platform that we started with. Yeah. And I reached out to several major ministries, and several of them gave us permission to use their stuff on the radio station.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. We were going along just fine. We were slowly going up in the charts. And the quality, because I had this headset, and then I went and purchased an even, the first headset was like $19.95, right?
Yeah.
So then we went and we spent
$19.95, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
From Walmart or something, right?
Yeah.
So then we went and I purchased one for like $40, $39.95. And the quality difference was even more drastic. Wow. I'm sounding professional now. This is awesome. And fast forward to 2013, and summertime, right in that area. Laura said, this platform's not doing everything I want you to be able to do. I want you to be able to go live in any time zone around the world, so that any broadcaster in any time zone in any country if they have connection to an internet, can do live broadcasts, just like traditional radio, over this platform. And then he gave me a list of 10 things that he wanted this station to be able to do. I was talking to my son-in-law about it, and he said, well, you know, if we could have this, 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 and this, and he added 4 more things to it, he said it'd make it perfect. And over the summer and into the fall, we tested 5 or 6 different platforms. Didn't like any of them. Until early November, we found, at the time it was called wavestreaming.com. And this not only had the 10 that the Lord gave us, it also had the 4 items my son-in-law said we needed. This is the first one we found doing that. And that's who we went with. And that was starting Evangelism Radio. Now, at the time, I had Evangelism Radio and the one on Live 365 FTF Christian Radio. And it was just everything was mirrored. It was basically the same broadcast, except different platforms. I figured different audiences, it only takes me a few minutes to mirror it. Who knew that in December of 2013, Live 365 went bankrupt? All of a sudden we got a letter in the mail or an email that said, sorry, we're now going dark, right? And Live 365 and FTF Christian Radio just went away. It was gone. We didn't miss a beat because Evangelism Radio had already been going along, catching traction. So I just emailed, and put social posts out that this is where we're at now. Come find us, And Evangelism Radio, within 7 or 8 months, 8 months of that, because August of 2014, we became #1 in the world as ranked by shoutcast.com for Christian Talk Radio the very first time. We had shot up the rankings that much. And now Evangelism Radio is heard in over 160 nations, all 50 states. We have, at one time, we had 60 broadcasters. I think we're at 52, 53 right now, that send us programming every single week. And like I said, we've been operating 24/7 the whole time. And the podcast that you were on, the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, was basically an extension of the radio station as a way for me to interview the broadcasters. But,
right. We're going to get to that in just a minute. I just want to break in here. Okay. So you had been trying to, this is the What's Your Excuse show, and you can find me at theblindblogger.net. And I'm talking with Bob Thibodeau. He's a preacher, public speaker, author, podcast host, and radio network owner. And you can find him at bobthibodeau.com. And I understand that the idea was originally you were going to interview the hosts on your network and try to promote them and draw more traffic to the station.
That's correct. Yep. And you got no question? Or
no, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that's correct. That was the whole purpose of the podcast, right? And, it'd be like 1 this month, maybe 2 next month, then maybe skip a couple months and do 2 more, and then skip a month, do 3. It was just hit and miss all over the place. But one day I got an email from a publicist wanting me to do an interview for an author who's just releasing a book. Like, yeah, okay, no problem. That was so much fun, so interesting. And I guess I did a good job because he gave me a great review on it. And then I got a couple more contacts from the publicist. And I guess publicists talk to each other.
We talk to each other.
Yeah, soon I had other publicists reaching out to me. And I found out that their stories, like your story, Maxwell, is so interesting because the pastors I was interviewing were all cookie cutter. I was lost, got born again, got called, went to school, now I'm a pastor. I was lost, got born again, got called, went to school, now I'm a pastor. It's just like lockstep, each one of them. But everybody's individual stories is what makes the interview process so much more interesting, And, I've done musicians, I've done missionaries, I've done Christian business owners. They're secular businesses, but, they operate according to Christian principles. Think Chick-fil-A type thing, right?
Yeah.
Nonprofit leaders. It's just, I've interviewed television program hosts. I just did an interview last week with Dr. David Reagan from Christ and Prophecy television show. Just a great interview. But these doors have been opened for me because of this platform and because of the interviews. And we've now had, what I technically call the launch of our podcast when I started doing this type of interviews was January 1st of 2017. Okay. So we just coming up now.
In your third year now.
Yeah, just coming up on the third year. And we've had 600 episodes. I've done over 400 interviews. And it's just so much fun when I do these interviews. Every interview is an enlightenment to me. I learn something from every interview. And sometimes someone will say, "Hey, what about if you did it this way?" It's like the microphone I use now is the Blue Yeti. So if you use the Blue Yeti, it'd be even. Now there's other ones out there, dynamic microphones with the cords that plug into soundboards on it. I don't have all that, so I still use a USB mic. But I use a Blue Yeti, and that's what I'm using today. And the quality between the headset that I was using and the Blue Yeti, it just blew me away. I mean, I actually did a test recording with the cell phone, a test recording with the first headset, a test recording with the second headset, and a test recording. And in between all that, I also had the Snowball microphone and then the Blue Yeti. And when I played it for our board of directors, I mean, you could just see the difference in their faces. I mean, like, wow, that sounds awesome. And compared to the cell phone, yeah.
Talk a little more about the fun, because I think a lot of people that are thinking about starting a podcast, they get caught up in all the details of putting their podcast out there. They get too focused on the technology, and they forget about the enjoyment and the energy levels that can be affected by having great conversations with people like we do.
Absolutely. As I said, I am not a technically inclined person, right? But I have learned, and as I said in the beginning, I basically taught myself. Does this work? Nope. Okay. Does this work? Oh, I don't know what I just did. Nothing's working now. And I call my son-in-law. And either come over, he'd try, usually I say, okay, go up here, click this. What do you see? Okay, click this. Does it work? Yeah, it works now. Okay, great. What did I do? Don't worry about it. It's fixed, type thing. And, and then if I really broke something, he'd have to come over and fix it. But because of the repetition involved, because once you get into it, it's really the same thing over and over, but just a different program. But it's always the same format, the same steps involved. And what I would do is I was keeping a notepad. He'd tell me, okay, in order to go live, you need to do this. In order to record this, you need to do this. And I'd be writing these steps out, and I'd have that notepad in front of me. And that's what I would do. Okay, click here. Okay, click here. Okay, click here. Hit record. Boom. It works, type thing, right? And just over repetition, I was learning that. Now, then I'd be talking to someone and they'd be, I just don't know how to do it. Oh, that's all you got to do. Look, I'm talking to them on their phone. Say, okay, look up here. Do you see this? Yeah. Click that. Okay. Now, do you see this? Yeah. Okay. Click that. You see this? Yeah. Okay. Hit record. Oh, wow. It's working, type thing. It's made me sound like I was so brilliant. Really, all I was doing was the same thing my son-in-law told me,
The problem with that is people will start to assume you know what the heck you're doing, and you won't be able to dissuade them from that opinion.
Exactly. Whenever I go speak somewhere, especially if it's in the ministry and we're talking about the radio station, my traveling crew, I guess say, involves my son-in-law, my daughter. They usually operate the video cameras and things like that. And I'll tell everyone, see that guy right there? That's my son-in-law, Chris. This radio station, he is really the radio station. I'm just the voice. If it wasn't for him and the setup he's got, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. And that is the honest to God truth. But it's just the repetition that I learned, basically self-taught.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. When we aren't capable of doing something, we have to invite those people in to help us, and it can be family members, it can be people who have met you online or in person who have taken a liking to you that may want to volunteer their services. It can be actually paying help. It can be formal interns through colleges or even high schools, some of them now. So but knowing what you're capable of, and then allowing and encouraging other people to help along on your journey is usually how we get things like that done. So
exactly,
it's very, very lucky, very, very blessed for you to have people in the family who either know that stuff or have learned it and can teach it to you. That's a great blessing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So all right, you talked a little bit about starting the radio network, and are there things with it now that continue to challenge you, or do y'all pretty much have it all straightened out?
It's pretty much self-operating. I mean, I dedicate at least 4 hours a day to it, just to keep things running smooth and loading files. I'm editing files all the time that people are sending me. Broadcaster will send something in, and it might be 52 minutes long, and they have a half-hour program, right? And a half an hour in radio. And this one thing I did appreciate from being part of the Wilkins Communication, radio system and all that. I learned so much about radio broadcasting from them. About, that's really when I got the quality headset and things like that, instead of just talking on the cell phone, because quality is everything. And being able to stick to the timetable, right? With radio, you have a time slot, and they don't care if, you're wrapping up and okay, I only have 3 more minutes. I'm just going to keep going and finish. At the end of your time slot, they cut you off mid-sentence, right? It just goes to the next broadcast. So I learned about, staying on time, how to edit files, how to load files to a server, because you had to, for that rate I was getting, I had to actually load it to the server for them and different things like that. So I learned that. And then as we were growing our radio station, I was implementing that on a daily basis. And now it's so easy for me to take all these files. Like I said, there's 52 different broadcasters, and I would say somewhere along the lines of 30 of them I have to do edits on. And some of the people, the other ones, the other 22, they're already edited. They send me the complete file. It's just basically a drag and drop type system into our system. I have 2 servers, the public server and then the private server that is the radio station. And they'll drop it into the public server. I'll take it from there and transfer it over to the private server. And it's just drag and drop, and it's on the radio. Then the other, people that send me their file, it might be they have a 52 or 48-minute file, and they have a, half-hour program. Half hour for the radio is actually a 28-minute time slot because of what? Commercials, right? Even though we're a nonprofit, I don't have commercials like, buy Dove soap or anything like that. But it's commercials for the radio station. It's commercials for the broadcasters, different things like that. And that gives me the opportunity. Let's say that someone sends a file and it's 28 minutes and 45 seconds long. I don't have to edit it. I'll just go ahead and play it and remove a couple commercials, right? But I have to add intro music, outro music, and things like that to some of these files. And it sounds like it's a big process, and it was. And thank God for small beginnings, because when I first started Live 365 and I was doing these edits and I only had 10 broadcasters, in 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon, I could have all the edits done and the radio station loaded for the whole week and just walk away from it and it'd be good to go. When you got 52 broadcasters, and some are on Sunday only for an hour, some are Sunday only for a half hour, some are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, some are Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, some are just Saturdays. It's all over the schedule. And when I have to do edits, I actually sit down on Saturday and I'm there for about 7 or 8 hours just doing the edits to all these files. But I have it down to such a process that it's easier for me just to do it than it would be to try and train someone else to, because I train someone else to do it, I have to do it anyway, right?
Well, you might. It depends on how good you trained them and how talented they were to start with. So,
right.
But yeah, you more than likely would end up having to do it anyway, or you'd at least have to review their work to make sure you were happy with it.
Yeah, and then someone says, they after about 4 or 5 months, they're really getting to the flow. Like, I got another job bagging groceries down at the grocery store. See ya.
Yeah.
all that time, so I just took it on myself that I'm just going to do it and we're going to go with it. But yeah, it has gotten we started totally free, just trusting God for the offerings. And from October 4th, 2010 to today, the budget has been met every month. We've never had 1 month where the budget has not been met. But about a year or so ago, we got up above 60 broadcasters, and the offerings were, barely meeting the budgets. And I was getting burned out. I was working, this is literal, I am not exaggerating this. I was literally working 12 and 14-hour days, 7 days a week to keep up with everything. And I was getting burned out. I had not had a day off in like 3.5 years, right? And my wife was getting mad at me because I'd come into the radio station in my office here at 8:30 in the morning and not leave till 11 o'clock at night, right? So she was getting upset with me. I'm getting burned out. And one day I just thought, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I'm going to quit. And I sent an email to all the board members, say, you know what? I'm burned out. I'm done. I'm tired of, and they talked me into staying. And I said, I'm tired of worrying, am I going to have the money come in to pay the bills on time and all that? I said, well, maybe it's time to start charging. And I said, I didn't want to do that because I said, no, there's nothing wrong with charging a small fee to people. So that's what we set up. And it's small. I mean, if you went to our website, evangelismradio.com, and looked at the pricing chart, you could have a 1-hour broadcast 7 days a week live, which is the most expensive plan. You could do live 1 hour a day, 7 days a week, and it's like $75 a month, right? You can't do that on a traditional radio station.
That's $2.50 a day.
Yeah. If you wanted to do
somewhere
programs, it's like $50 a month.
Yeah, somewhere there are people who use very foul language about you, I'm sure.
Oh, that's why I went from over 60, we dropped down to like 45 in a week's time, which was fine with me because these people weren't contributing anything in offerings anyway, right? I was doing it as a service to them, and they got upset because now we're going to go to an invoicing system. So they, and we built back up from 45 to 52 or whatever we're at now. But new people coming on understand what the rules are, right?
Yeah.
But I don't try and make, we're not making millions of dollars or anything like that. But it is nice to have the extra money in the bank to know that if a computer breaks, I can get a new one, like that. So, that's where we're at. It's been awesome. I've got some time back. Like I said, now I'm down to 4 hours a day instead of 16, except on Saturday, which is an 8-hour day. So,
yeah. Now, a lot of people who do podcasts, they eventually get into public speaking, and I know that you do that now, and you also have done some event planning. And I was hoping you would tell the story you told me the other day about your first live event up in Dallas, because I think the way you handled it was very encouraging, considering the kind of money we were talking about. Because I'm known for finding the positive in life, and I've written a couple of posts about book signings where nobody showed up, but I didn't have real money invested in any of that. Only my pride and my reputation was all I had tied up with it. So, but I just thought this was a great story, and it's the kind of thing that we really like here on the What's Your Excuse show. We're real big on stories, especially if if there's some drama, some tragedy, and eventually some good news at the end kind of stories, so I would love it if you would tell that story again about your first event. I really enjoyed it, I think.
Absolutely. The what happened?
Oh.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. I seen. I'm sorry. Let me get my thoughts here again. Okay. I attended Bible school 1998, 1999. And after graduating, I decided, I know I want to share the gospel and I want to hold my own meetings. So I was going to do it the old fashioned way, right? And I was going to go and rent an auditorium or a storefront or a convention, not a huge convention center, but, a smaller meeting room somewhere, and hotels, whatever. And that's where we'd hold our meetings. And, the first couple I did, it was so-so, because it was in a local town, and, it was, whatever. So I decided, we're going to do this right. We're going to have a huge event, and we'll hold it out of town, which is Abilene, Texas to Fort Worth. It's about 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that, nobody knows who I am, but we'll promote it, and we'll make it look like, there's big things coming to town. And now I need some headliners. So I reached out to Trinity Broadcasting Network, went on their website, because I had seen some of the people singing on there and all that, and reached out to Vern Jackson, because you're talking Texas, right? Country music,
Right.
Vern Jackson was basically a country gospel singer. So I reached out to him, and he agreed to come out to our meeting. And I had to pay him $1,000, and he'd take care of his own airline ticket. And I thought, awesome, okay. Now, I had met through, remember, the insurance agency I had, one of my board members was good friends with a gospel saxophonist named Bernard Johnson, Dr. Bernard Johnson. He's really popular in the Church of God in Christ, which is an African-American church. And he was known as the world's greatest gospel saxophonist. And I got to meet him. And quick story on that, because it's awesome. He was coming to our town. I lived in Killeen, Texas, outside of Fort Hood. And my board member said, hey, Bernard is doing a banquet in Killeen. I'm going to come down for it. Do you want to come meet him? And I said, what day is it? And he told me the time. I said, I have an insurance appointment that night at 5:00, but I'll come as soon as the appointment is over. And I'll walk in. He says, okay, I'll save you a seat. Right. And I said, do I have to dress up or anything? He said, no, just, wear whatever you want. I said, okay. So I'm on the insurance appointment in a polo shirt, white polo shirt, and khaki pants. So I go over to the hotel where this thing is at, and it's already going up. And the guy told me, he said, now, when you walk in, just look at me, because I'll have a seat next to me for you, because I'll probably be the only white guy in the place. I said, okay, not a problem. So I get there, I go to the door, and, the guy says, can I help you? I says, yeah, I'm looking for a friend of mine. He's here. And I see Doug James. He's up on the stage. Bernard Johnson is speaking, and Doug James is sitting in, there's like 4 or 5 chairs off on the side, and he's in one of these chairs with a couple other people. And he sees me at the door, and he waves and flags me in, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, everyone here is in black tie. I'm in a white polo shirt and khakis, right? And then Bernard sees me, and he says, oh, here's the other guy we're waiting on. Yeah, come on up. Now, when there's 1,000 people in the room and the guy speaking says, oh, here's the other guy we're waiting for, every head in the place turns and finds you. And they follow me as I go all the way up to the platform and up on the stage. And I sit down next to Doug James, and he leans over and says, told you I'd save you a seat. Oh, man. But Bernard was awesome. It was a great concert, and I got to meet him afterwards. And I arranged for him to come to a church. It's probably 6 months later in the town, and he performed there, and he liked the way I'd set everything up. Anyway, I had reached out to him to do the second night at the Abilene Convention Center. And I said, I figured one night would be the country version, and then the next night would be the saxophone gospel concert. And that's the way we promoted it. And I did television advertising, I did radio advertising, I did newspaper advertising, I sent flyers to the churches. And then, my wife and I and the family, my crew drove out there the day that the concert was supposed to happen with Vern Jackson. And we got to the convention center to set up, and the guy said, where have you been? I goes, what do you mean? He goes, we had probably 60 to 100 people show up last night. But last night? He goes, yeah, we told them it wasn't until tonight, but I thought maybe we had our dates wrong. I said, no, it's supposed to be tonight. And then I looked at the newspaper, and I had put the wrong dates on all of the advertising, every one of them. And I was like, okay, this is not good. And we set up, met Vern Jackson. He did his sound checks and stuff. And this was a 2,000 seat auditorium. Now, I wasn't expecting to pack it out. I think the bottom floor sat about 1,200, and the other 800 were up in the upper deck. And we had spotlights. I mean, we had the whole thing going. This is supposed to be awesome. And I was going to sing to open the program. And I went backstage, and I was just praying real hard. And my assistant would come in and said, don't tell me how many people are here. Just tell me that people are coming in. That's all I want to know. I don't want to know numbers until I actually walk out on stage. And he said, okay. So he come in and said, people coming in? He said, yeah, you could say that. I said, okay. He said, do you want to know? No, I don't want to know. And when I walked out on stage, there was a grand total of 7 people in the audience in a 2,000 seat auditorium. 13 people if you count my crew, right?
Yeah.
And that was Vern Jackson's audience. 13 people in a 2,000 seat auditorium because I had screwed up. And we had ordered t-shirts just specifically with the dates of that concert. I mean, I had gone all out because this was going to be a huge thing. And the offering that night was something like $15. It cost me $1,000 per night, right? And I got 2 nights.
Yeah.
Luckily, the night for the next night, Bernard Johnson had promoted this concert to his network of people, and he had the nights correct in his advertising. And we packed the place out. There was probably 900 to 1,000 people there that night. And he took the offering. The deal was it was going to be 50-50 on the offering. And when he found out what happened the night before, he just gave me the entire offering to pay for his night. And, you know, he made money off his CD sales and video sales and things like that. But, you know, he just gave me the entire offering. It was about $1,000. So that took care of his bill. But I still owed $1,000. And it took me probably a year to pay that off. And that was a learning experience about double checking dates, double checking your work, have somebody else proofread all your ads and make sure that it's right, because it was a very costly mistake, but one that I've never forgotten.
Yeah. And have you put on any events since that one?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. I've been, several, I won't say a lot, but I guess that would have been 1999 or 2000. So that would have been 19 years ago. And yeah. I've done probably a dozen over those years. For the church that I was attending at the time, I was the special event coordinator pastor. So, they were holding a major event. I'm the one who did, because, fast forward a little bit more from that, because of that Abilene concert, because of all the core, I had put it all together. I had pieced everything together. It just had the advertising wrong. This is the only thing that was wrong, advertising. Bernard was so impressed, he hired me about 2 months later because he wanted me to come in and help him with a concert up in Oklahoma. I said, okay, no problem. So I went up and I set everything up for him and got it running and introduced him all that. That night, he asked me to come to work for him as his national concert coordinator. And wow. He said, what do you need? What do I need to pay you? So I told him, this is how much money I need. It was like $2,000 a month back then. And he said, okay, you got it. He said, I need you to work for me. Well, what that meant was, he'd come in and he'd say, Bob, I think the Lord's leading us to go to San Diego. Set it up. From the time he said that until they said, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Bernard Johnson, everything had to pass through. The location, the venue, the insurance, the flights, the meals, who's going to be on stage, who's going to be, the guest speaker, who's, the advertising, everything passed through me. There were times we'd be at the airport. This is before cell phones, right? And I would be waiting for the flight using the calling card, AT&T calling card.
Yeah, and phone credit card.
That to call the location I'm going to 6 weeks from now, right? Because when we finish the concert in Minneapolis, I'm flying to Richmond, Virginia, to promote the concert that is taking place 6 weeks later while Bernard goes home, right? And when I land in Richmond, I'd have a driver, and they'd take me around to like 10 or 12 churches where I could speak at the announcements, tell them, promoting the concert. So it was not unusual for us to leave Dallas, Texas on Friday morning I'll just pick towns, to go to Minneapolis, do a concert Friday night, leave Saturday morning, go to Wichita, Kansas, and do a concert there, and then fly to Richmond, Virginia Sunday morning to promote the concert 6 weeks later. Right? That was my life. I was basically his road manager.
Yeah.
I learned so much about holding and what had the coordination for major events. And that's why at the churches that I would be in, they would make me the special event pastor. So if they wanted to hold a major something, a revival or whatever, then I was the one who would coordinate everything. And so I've done several events over the last 20 years, including some of my own. They have drastic failures is the first one.
See, I knew there was a reason I wanted you to tell that story. I just didn't know what it was when I asked you, other than it was a good story. I mean, think about this. You put on an event that at least one night of which is a disaster, and you end up getting hired out of it to a job that, while it was stressful and a learning experience, it was well paying and enjoyable, and so. As I like to tell people, mistakes aren't the worst things that can happen. Being afraid to make them is, and definitely you don't seem to be afraid of that.
You learn from your mistakes. Where it becomes tragic is when you continue doing the same stupid things over and over again. As long as you learn from the mistake, you can grow. And well, I had to grow from that one. I tell you, my biggest learning experiences, I've had to get to the point where I don't leave town unless somebody other than me is paying the expenses. They don't necessarily have to write me a check, but they do have to assure that that the plane ticket or the train ticket is covered, and there's a place for me to stay, and somebody's going to feed me. So Amen.
because I can't afford to subsidize my own travels, like some people can. So. Yeah. And so that's one of those things I've really had to learn. And the funny thing is as soon as I made that a hard rule, events started showing up both local and in other parts of the country where people did exactly that.
Yep. Amen. Yeah, that's my speaking career. It's mainly been local. By local, I mean within driving distance of Baltimore. I've done a couple of ministry events across the country and stuff where people invite me out, but my actual speaking, the quote unquote motivational, inspirational speaker type thing, those have been mainly local because of the expenses involved in traveling and things like that. Yep.
Yeah. For me, Houston is a difficult city because I live in Conroe, which is 45 miles outside of downtown Houston. Mm-hmm. So even traveling to Houston for an event it requires a decent amount of money, either for Uber or for somebody that's willing to drive for their meals or whatever. Mm-hmm. Not a lot seems to happen out in Conroe or the Woodlands as far as speaking events go, but they are. But even Houston, it's better than trying to get myself to Philadelphia or Chicago or something. So. I know time has gotten away from us, and there's a lot of other things I'd like to ask you about, like your podcasting course, to teach people how to start their own podcast. But there's one question I want to make sure I don't forget to ask, and if I don't ask it now, I may. Several times during our talk, you've said that the Lord called you or told you or gave you a list of things that you needed for the radio network. How did these thoughts or instructions come to you? Can you at least try to explain what you're meaning by the Lord told you? Because I'm sure that's something a lot of people that are listening are thinking about and wondering about.
Okay. Well, you understand that I started off podcasting with the cell phone over the free platform, and I learned things along the way. And then we went to Live 365 and learned that platform and some of the things I liked, some of the things I didn't like, but we, made a go of it. We learned along the way. And as the Lord was laying on my heart, that this platform is not doing everything I would like it to do. Mainly the live broadcast aspect. Live 365, you could go live with live365.com, but you physically had to push the live broadcast button. And when you concluded, you physically had to push the stop live broadcast button. If you forgot and just walked away, it would continue to play dead air, right? So if I had someone in Houston that was doing a live broadcast and I was supposed to go on right after them, and they were in a hurry because the wife was, come on, we're late for dinner type thing, and they hurry up, put their headset down and walked out, nobody could go live. There would be no music. It'd just be dead silence, right? So there was no way for me to go in and kick them off because they had to use my credentials to log on, right? So as we were praying about that, the Lord said, okay, you want to find a platform that will allow you to have a live broadcaster, but they'll automatically terminate their live broadcast for them at the end of their time slot, right? And that was a big sticking point for a lot of these things, but it was just knowing what was good on a platform and what was needful to do what the Lord was envisioning me to do with this platform, which was the whole embodiment of the whole thing was to be able to go live in every time zone, anywhere in the world, whatever there was a person that had an internet connection that was authorized for that time slot. So, if I was doing a live broadcast from Beijing, China, I have a time slot on the radio station. I can do so. You can't have two at the same time. Servers won't allow it.
Right.
And if someone walked away from their recording, the server, and it's done this to me on my Sunday morning broadcast, I could be going along and I let the time get away from me. I look up and I got 1 minute left and I still got like 4 minutes of notes. Right. Now, remember, I'm recording for my daily broadcast too, not just the Sunday morning broadcast. So I was like,
because
well, I'm just
repurposing your Sunday to the rest of the week.
Yeah. So I'll just continue on, and when 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time rolls around, I'll see the little live button go off on my platform. The recording's still taking place. I'm just not live broadcasting anymore.
Right.
So that server does not discriminate. It keeps me off.
Okay, so you would pray over every one of these decisions, and then you would listen for that small voice to give you an answer as to what you needed to do next in your. And that's something you've done all your life, or at least going back to
1990, January 25th, 1992 is when I got born again. And that's when I started hearing that still small voice. And, before any major decision, I'll pray about it. Like we've been putting together a Christian podcast hosting platform, hosting and marketing for Christian podcasters only. It's called faithcasters.net. And that started 18 months ago. And we're probably within a week or two of doing the beta testing for it. And our target date is sometime January 2020 of officially launching it, but it's that close now. But, this was like, okay, is this something I really want to do? And then pray about that. And then there'd be different things that happen with a host or something that we're doing, and somebody would say something, just little confirmations like, yeah, okay, I think we need to do this. And I took it to the board of directors and they said, well, research it, tell us how much it'll cost. And, it's all these little steps along the way where prayers are being answered, like, how are we going to do this? How's this going to work? The people I've met, I got to meet John Lee Dumas up in Philadelphia with EO Fire podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, former cavalry officer, just like I am. So we were hitting it off.
I got to hear him talk, but I didn't get to meet him. So
yep. And
amazing speaker.
He pointed me out to Mark Asquith. He said, because I was telling him what my idea was, and I was wondering, if he'd give me advice. He pointed me out to Mark Asquith, who is the basically the engineer behind all of that. I went and met him, and he was so impressed with what we're trying to do. He said, let's stay in touch because we got something coming that might help you out. And over the course of time, Mark Asquith and his team is who's developed the platform we're using right now. So it's been awesome for faithcasters.net. But little things like that, you pray about it, a door will open, you go through it, you meet somebody who will then open another door for you. And that's what I'm talking about, things like that.
Okay. Well, I was hoping you would talk a little bit about it, because I'm sure that, as many times as you referred to that, somebody was going to go, Max, why didn't you ask him about that? So, and I try to ask the questions that I would like to know the answers to, as well as the ones I think that somebody's going to write me an email and go, Max, what were you doing?
Well,
I really
talk about that list. That list was, things that I did not like about the platforms we were on, and what I would like to be able to fix it. And like I said, when I finally said, yeah, this would make a great radio station, present my son-in-law, and he's looking at it, and that's when he added 4 things to make it even better. And then the search began until we finally found a platform that did it. It's now called radio.co. At the time, it was called wavestreaming.com. Now it's .co, but the platform is basically, the same. Evangelismradio.com is the radio station when he wants to go listen to it. It's awesome. If I do say so.
And why don't you tell them a little bit about your podcasting training program and your podcasting, starting a podcast checklist, or
okay,
and then we'll close off the show.
Okay. Because of, remember I was talking about the little checklist that I would have with me as I'm doing every episode, until it got to be habit and I knew what to do. And then I started sharing this list with people, and they go, how do I do this? And I just tell them, click here, and that's where this checklist came from. And I would meet people either on Facebook or in person, or, they'd email, how do I do this? Do you know how to do this type thing? And I say, well, tell you what, let me put this list together that I have. And if you just follow the list, it'll work. And I started sharing this list with people, and it became my podcast creation checklist. And if you follow the checklist beginning in step 1 and do not skip any steps, by the time you get down to the end, you have your podcast up and running. And it may even be monetized by that point in time. I can't guarantee that, of course. But the podcast creation checklist, I share that with anybody who wants it. And matter of fact, I'm going to set up a special website just for you, Max. I'll send you the link, a web page just for you and your listeners. I'll send you the link to it, so it'll be included down in the show notes.
Right.
But they'll be able to download this checklist absolutely free. I'm not going to even ask for an email. Okay. This is just something, click on it and download and save it. No opt-in required at all. But I can guarantee I will give them their money back. Remember, it's free. Give them their money back if they follow that list completely and do not have a podcast by the time they finish.
All righty. What is step 1? I'm just curious.
What is your niche? Who is your audience? Who are you talking to?
Okay.
That is the number one thing, because if I decide I'm going to start a podcast on heart surgery, right? Who am I going to talk to? Is it the heart surgeons that I'm going to talk to? They might be interviewed. They might be my interview. Who is the target audience? That is the primary decision you need to make. Who are you ministering to? Who are you talking to? Because if I'm going to minister to cardiac patients, but I know absolutely nothing about heart surgery, that's probably not going to work out too well, right? So it has to be something that you are good at, something that is of interest to you, and who is your target audience, because it has to be interesting to them. Otherwise, you're just talking and nobody's listening.
Right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today, and would love it if you would leave the audience with just one final thought, something you think that will help them overcome their excuses and hopefully start accomplishing their goals.
In the military, I used to have a sign behind my desk that said, now, in the military, you had to know your weapons inside and out. You had to know what your maximum effective range was, because you didn't want to shoot at a tank with a pistol that was 300 yards away, right? It's not going to do anything at all except make them mad.
Right.
So you had to know what the effective use of the weapon was, and you had to know the maximum range that you could use that weapon for. And I had a sign behind my desk that said the maximum effective range of an excuse is 0 meters. In other words, I don't want to hear it. Another saying I had was, because people come in, they'll tell you, well, I got this problem, and I got it. And I used to say, look, don't tell me about the labor pains, just show me the baby. All right? I don't want to hear about all the problems. Just show me the results, right?
Okay.
And
All right.
so I guess the biggest point I could say is don't make excuses. Just do it. You know, if you said that I'm going to do 10 push-ups every morning, and then, well, you know, I've been kind of busy today and I didn't get around to do it. No. I don't want to hear the excuses. How long does it take to do 10 push-ups? You know, just do it. You know, if I want to launch a podcast, but I don't know how to do it. Well, I didn't know how to do it either, but I did it. Max didn't know how to do it either. He did it. The point is, whatever it is you want to do, just do it. Like Nike says, just do it. Because
yeah, hopefully they won't send us a bill.
Yeah, if you want to hold a meeting, a concert in a 2,000-seat auditorium for your first event, just do it. And boy, did I learn lessons from that.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I really do appreciate you coming on the show. I've been talking with Bob Thibodeau from Kingdom Cross Radio, and you can find him at bobthibodeau.com. Yep. You can also book him as a speaker. You can check out that creating a podcast checklist. You can look into if you're, you know, if the person you're wanting to target is something in the Christian ministry type arena, then you can look into possibly having your podcast or radio show on his network. So just go over there and get to know Bob. You'll really enjoy the experience.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and have a good day.
Be blessed.
Thank you. You too. Well, we had another great conversation again today, this time with Bob Thibodeau, and I did enjoy being on his podcast, and I don't know when his will go live. Who knows? Maybe both of these will go live at the same time. Talking, you know, for him, it's all about his faith in God, his trusting in the Lord, and praying over everything and asking for that still small voice to help him navigate those next steps. And me personally, I do have faith in God. I'm a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a very Bible-based faith where the people who are the elders and leaders do their best to pray over and listen to the Holy Spirit and hear what the real truth of the Bible is. So I have prayed and I've been blessed, and there have been many times in my life that God has come along and gotten me out of trouble that I got myself into. But then what he is saying, you know, it also works for people who have faith in their ability, their mission, their goal, their friends, their family. It's not the same. It's different, but we all have to have faith in something. And some people, it's that it's the universe, it's their higher power. So find someone or something that you can put that faith in that will help you during those dark down times when things aren't going your way. Notice I had him tell the story about his event that he planned, because I wanted a good example of overcoming failure and disaster and seeing how it benefited him. And I didn't know the whole story when I asked him to tell it, but I had a feeling, and it turned out I was right. You know, he ended up getting hired to what some of us would consider a dream job by putting on an event that didn't go so great. And we always learn, we make new connections, we make new friends, we build new relationships, we expand our circle of friends. And so even things that don't go so great, you never know where they will lead. Like I imagine I could reach out to the feller at Dog Ears Books in Buffalo, and we would probably, you know, talk about how bad things went last time and how things have been going for his store, and, you know, take it from there. So whether things go amazingly well or horribly wrong, always things to be learned from it, things to be gained from the experience. And then just look at how many times he had to reinvent himself, overcome setbacks, and move forward again. He loved being in the military, but he couldn't stay in the military. He loved being a cop, but the the injury caused while working on the job, he couldn't be a cop anymore. So now he's a preacher, an author, podcast host, radio network owner, and he's working hard to teach other people how to be podcasters so they can tell their stories or they can deliver their ministries, however they feel about it. So very glad that I got to spend some time with Bob. And also I should mention that I did meet Bob at the Mid-Atlantic Podcasters Conference, which is now known as the Independent Podcasters Conference, which will have their 6th year later this year. So you can check out Bob at bobthibodeau.com, and I'll add the link because if I tried to spell it for you each time, it would take a while and I'd get it wrong half the time. But I will let you know how to get a hold of him in the links. I want to mention a couple of things. One, Alex at the Nito Shop is the one responsible for my shirts being available for sale. He has made the process so easy for me to submit my artwork, to get demonstration prints of my shirts sent to me or to my designer so we can make sure that the shirts look as great in person as they do on the website. He was gracious enough to sponsor the website and my trip to Erie, Pennsylvania just a few weeks back. Because of him, I was able to have some shirts to sell, and I was able to sell 4 shirts. Plus, I got to wear a couple of them myself, which was really cool because I got lots of love on social media for them. Great quality, great prices. I think of a very friendly ordering process. I've managed to do it with my screener without any problems. You can find him at nitoshop.com. That's www.nitoshop.com. And if you go to nitoshop.com/artist/the-blind-blogger, you'll go to my page where you can see the artwork I have available and the shirts you can order. You can even order messenger bags and other things too. So go check that out. And then, of course, I have to, I just couldn't have gotten this far this year without help from Pam and Chip Edwards over at Create My Voice, and that's createmyvoice.com. They helped me get my website, my blog, my podcast out there where people can listen to it on their Alexa and Google devices. And, if you want to find me, you can go to theblindblogger.net, but you can also say, Alexa, start the Blind Blogger. Or you can say, Google, talk to the Blind Blogger. Either one of those. And, of course, you can say, Alexa, play Create My Voice, or okay, Google, talk to Create My Voice, and you can find out more about Chip and Pam's website. So this is something that's coming. Well, it's already here. There are millions of people getting their information, their blog posts, their podcast episodes through these wireless speakers. And if you're not on them, you're falling behind. You're missing out on a great opportunity to reach thousands, if not millions of people. And you can only do that if your website, your blog, your podcast have been optimized, set up so that they can be found. Plus, Chip just doesn't get you on these devices. He helps you create a branding strategy to claim and protect your name as people use it to find your content online. And, just like when you file for a domain name to make sure somebody else doesn't grab your domain and use your name to create something else, same thing with these online speakers. And Chip, he knows it all as far as branding, promoting, maximizing. And so definitely check him out at createmyvoice.com. Well, that's it for another episode of What's Your Excuse? I've really enjoyed my conversation with Bob, and I look forward to seeing who I'm going to have next on the show. If you think you have a story worth sharing, then reach out to me. Go to justask@theblindblogger.net. All righty. Until next time, thank you and take care out there. This is the Blind Blogger, Maxwell Ivy. This is What's Your Excuse? A dream is like a river, ever changing as it flows. And a dreamer's just a vessel that must follow where it goes, trying to learn from what's behind and never knowing what's in store. Makes each day a constant battle, just to stay between the shore.